So, my name is Matthew Adams. I'm Project Coordinator for the World Green Building Council, and I work on the Advancing Net Zero project overall. So, really about are we doing enough? We're going to look at what we're doing on a global front, but who we're working with overall. I also think there's a personal question there for me, which is like, what am I doing also in my own personal life? So, the way I choose to live, the way I choose to get to work, those sort of things are also key. But what we can achieve together, I think we'll show through this, and a lot of our panelists have been involved in the creation of the Net Zero Carbon Buildings commitment overall. It just shows that it's greater working together overall. So I'm going to start off with who we are. World Green Building Council is a global network of green building councils that is it's transforming the way that we live, work, play, heal and learn. We believe green buildings can and must be at the centre of our lives. We have 3 projects overall, global projects. One of those is Advancing Net Zero. Advancing Net Zero was created in 2016 to inspire action from our network to transition towards a zero emissions future. Within that project, we have 3 aims. The first one is to increase awareness and education about the urgency and the achievabilities of net zero carbon buildings and the actions that we need to do as well. The second one is achieving alignment and commonality overall. So between GBCs, their certification schemes to transition forward. And the last is to share and champion market-leading examples in industry. So in 2017, we called for action in May of 2017. So we released a call to action report called From Thousands to Billions, which called for 100% net zero carbon buildings by 2050 overall. And what that report showed was our theory of change, which documents business, NGO and governments working together to drive decarbonisation. And it also sets out the actions that were needed. Following that, one short year later, we released an infographic which set out a vision, the vision for net zero. And on that infographic, we had key milestones of 2050, 100% of buildings to operate at net zero, and then an interim target of 2030 for all new buildings to operate at net zero. And within the infographic, we also set out a definition of what net zero carbon buildings are to us and the key principles that are needed for net zero overall. We also set out 4 key GBC pathways there of how GBCs can engage with their industry to drive decarbonisation overall, because that's our strength. We're a global network of green building councils. We're privileged enough to have that global perspective, but then have the local context and act locally as well. So we called for action. We set out a vision. Now it was time for action. It was time to commit. Gets me every time. So we developed the commitment in partnership with C40 Cities and the Under 2 Coalition. And so basically, it was launched at GCAS in San Francisco, so Global Climate Action Summit, in September last year, which was only 6 short months ago. And it has 5 stages, which is, for the signatories who commit to it, 5 stages to complete, which is commit, disclose, act, verify, and advocate. And really what the commitment is about is promoting leadership through ambitious trajectories of setting net zero carbon buildings for businesses, organisations, cities, states and regions by 2030. It's about setting a level of ambition that will create unprecedented market demand and transform towards net zero buildings at mass scale. It's about signatories being required to track, determine and report, because we can't manage what we can't measure overall. And that's their building performance metrics and also associated emissions. And then the next one for that is then implementation of a roadmap towards energy efficiency strategies and renewable energy overall. And then the last one is about advocacy, and we think this is really crucial. This is the really independent part, and this is what will make a signatory their own. It's a business case of sorts. So through their advocacy, they then demonstrate up and down the supply chain through their core business activities the need to change, the need to be a catalyst overall to get towards net zero buildings. So we have 46 signatories overall since that time, 18 businesses and organisations, 22 cities, and then 6 states and regions. They're present in over 70 countries worldwide, and our latest signatory, California, just signed, which is the state of California. It's not a business, it's the whole state, which represents 16 million buildings alone. So this is that mass scale that we're looking for. This is the market transformation, and what we're really trying to do here is create something that we can all get around and we can signal to the public. I think that's a really important point, is that the public needs to be aware of the importance of this. We need something transparent, something easy to understand, and something like this I think is key. So, as I said, there was 22 cities overall, London being one of them, who have signed up to the Net Zero Carbon Buildings Commitment, and that's been through C40 cities overall. And they've signed up to the policy pathway and some for the municipal pathway, and the policy pathway is about setting up regulations towards new buildings by 2030 and then all buildings by 2050. So with this, we have signatory profiles for each city that sets out the planned actions that are needed. That's available on our website. I won't go into that in the short time I have, but please see our website, which has all the details up there. It includes planned regulations, enacted regulations, incentives, programs that are really helpful for other cities to see what others are doing. And I think the really powerful thing overall with these city signatories is that they create a signal to the market that we need to move towards this, that we need to transition to this decarbonisation. And also it gives a level of confidence and assurance to industry that they can take action now. And that's something that is obviously repetitively talked about, but can often be lacking. So something that we're really trying to focus on overall. But obviously it's not just about cities inspiring its inhabitants, it's the retail spaces, the office spaces. It also goes the other way. It's about businesses also showing cities where they need to go. It's about helping them to create potentially innovative solutions or demonstrating a very clear voice that we need stronger regulation overall. So Barclay Group is also a signatory from the business side who builds roughly 10% of London's homes. And for them, they have a low carbon transition plan so that they're becoming climate resilient and adapting towards having net zero carbon homes by 2030 as they see the need. Intel Group, also Elementa Consulting, they've also committed to be a business signatory, and they've committed to having a net zero carbon option for each design project that they undertake. Bruntwood, a commercial property developer up in the north of England, they have transforming the way that we live and work and are doing some really amazing sustainable practices in the co-working spaces. So lastly, I just want to touch on the sort of significance of these profiles, and in particular the Scottish Government who signed up. So what we really see is that they're demonstrating leadership and evidence of the possible, and there's a real willingness to collaborate overall and set out ambition. So for Scotland, when signing up, in the conversations we were having, we were really worried about the supply of natural gas and what that would mean. There's a concept within the overall commitment around direct control, and it's something they might not have direct control, but they knew that this is where we need to go. They took that leadership position, and they knew by standing up that then hopefully the utilities companies and so on would follow along, and something that is evidently happening over time. So I really want to touch on this because I think it's really how we sort of link in everyone in the panel in my eyes, and it's really that, it's about working together. It's about the we, and the I is great, but we need that sort of working together, the sum of the parts is stronger. So the framework, the commitment for us is really a framework for collaboration. It sets out a common vision across all sectors overall. It sets out a common language, common goals, and it inspires action. So what it really does is really reinforce that collaboration between business and government towards creating bolder climate action, and it's the action that we need. It's tough, and the only way we're going to do it is if we do it together. We do it together. Thank you.